Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening. We are going to make a start. First of all, can I welcome you and thank you. My name is Muhammad Habib Rahman. I'm the chairman of the East London Mosque and the London Muslim Center. I'm delighted to see so many of you are able to come today. As you know, this is an annual event and it's a very important occasion, and hence we are very pleased that you're able to join us. I'm going to call to the front our Imam, Senior Imam, Sheikh Muhammad Mahmoud, to come to the front. And inshallah, we will start our proceedings with some recitation from the Quran. I'm going to ask Imam Mahmoud to recite from the Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون فرحين بما آتاهم الله من فضله ويستبشرون بالذين لم يلحقوا بهم من خلفهم ألا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون يستبشرون بنعمة من الله وفضل وأن الله لا يضيع أجر المؤمنين الذين استجابوا لله والرسول من بعد ما أصابهم القرح للذين أحسنوا منهم واتقوا أجر عظيم الذين قال لهم الناس إن الناس قد جمعوا لكم فاخشوهم فزادهم إيمانا وقالوا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل فانقلبوا بنعمة من الله وفضل لم يمسسهم سوء واتبعوا رضوان الله والله ذو فضل عظيم إنما ذلكم الشيطان يخوف أولياءه فلا تخافوهم وخافون إن كنتم مؤمنين صدق الله العظيم.
Thank you very much, Sheikh Muhammad Mahmoud, Imam of East London Mosque. This event, as you know, is organized by the London Muslim Center and the Bosnia Heritage Foundation, and to commemorate the 24th year of the anniversary of the Srebrenica Genocide. A number of other organizations have been supporting it, and we'd like to thank all those organizations, including Remembering Srebrenica. And also, as you know, that such events are happening in many parts of the world. Yesterday marked the 24th year since the horrific genocide in Srebrenica, where 8,000 men and boys were murdered by the Serb forces in cold blood and in full view of the world. It is the single greatest atrocity in Europe since the Second World War. Many of us remember watching the horrors on the television screens when the ethnic cleansing was actually taking place. In Bosnia, it wasn't just killing in a war, but a premeditated attempt at cleansing the region of a whole people with roots going back centuries. What's more, the horrific nature of the barbarity and the brutality is too gruesome to even comprehend. Babies put through mince machines, women raped, bodies cut into pieces and buried in different locations, destruction of most of the mosques, shows really the callousness and the hatred leading to an absolute disregard for human life and places of worship. And that is why, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, that we should never forget, and we must never allow something like this to ever happen again. When I visited Sarajevo just after the ceasefire, I saw for myself, while every building was riddled with bullet holes and damaged or destroyed by shells, the church stood almost without a scratch, indicating the difference in the behavior between the communities. I'm honored and proud to say we in this masjid and the London Muslim Centre, with the Bosnia Heritage Foundation, have been holding commemoration events every year for the last 16 years, and we plan to continue to do so. As I say, it's so important that we don't forget. In addition, what we have been trying to do, and we have been doing, is to help raise some funds for Bosnians, organize events, exhibitions, and video viewings to raise awareness, send various delegations to Bosnia to help and understand the situation there, including the participation in the peace walks, and we'll have a video today of one of those. We've hosted current and former Grand Muftis of Bosnia here at the East London Mosque and other leaders, including the Bosnian president. We also launched the European Declaration by the former Grand Mufti, Dr. Mustafa Seric, in the mosque, which was his first major event in the UK. Bosnia, Srebrenica are in our hearts and in our prayers, must always remain so. And we pray that Allah Almighty accepts all of them as martyrs, enters them in the highest place in paradise, provides peace to the survivors and their families. And we continue to demand and seek answers and justice for all the injustices done. I invite you to listen carefully to the valuable reflections and the lessons learned from the Bosnian genocide from our esteemed guests and speakers. Just to quickly run through, we have a number of distinguished guests with us today. So very shortly we'll be listening to Rabbi Gluck, who's going to give his reflection on the Srebrenica genocide. Imam Kurtik is here. He's an imam, Bosnian imam, and he's going to be giving his reflections as well. Dr. Eric Gordy, a renowned author and academic, he's going to be talking about the narrative of hate and how that leads to genocide. We also have a video from Hassan Nuhanovic, who was employed by the UN at the time, and we're going to be seeing a video from him. We have one of the mothers, Bosnian mothers, Ramiza Gurdic. He's going to be giving us the keynote speech, inshallah, and thank you very much for being here, as well as have more videos and also reflections from Margaret Minoletti and Harun Rashid Khan. And we hope to finish our program by 9 o'clock, inshallah. So before I call our first speaker, there is a video. Yesterday, I believe, Janazah, funeral prayers were held for 33 victims of the Srebrenica genocide. we have a video of the funeral prayers and the Janazah prayers, and we'll start by playing that.
ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون فرحين بما آتاهم الله من فضله ويستبشرون بالذين لم يلحقوا بهم من خلفهم ألا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون
المؤمنون لا يموتون بل ينقلون من دار الفناء إلى دار البقاء يا مولانا يا الله يا الله الموت شراب وكل ناس شاربون
We repeat our prayers for those 33 for whom the Janazah prayer or the funeral prayer was carried out yesterday. At least for the families, that gives them some closure. But we know that there are many others for whom this has not been possible. So again, we repeat our prayers for them. One thing all of us will have noticed that many of the victims were very, very young men in their early 20s or even less than 20. And that's such a huge shame. Can I call upon our first speaker, Rabbi Herschel Gluck, OBE. Rabbi is the chairman of the Arab Jewish Forum and chairman and founder of the Muslim Jewish Forum. And Rabbi Herschel is going to be giving us his reflections on the Srebrenica genocide. So Rabbi, you're very welcome.
Being here today, even though I've been to a number of such commemorations over the years, is a very emotional and powerful event. There are those who might think, what is a Jewish rabbi doing at this event? And I'd like to start with a story that happened during the siege of Sarajevo, that I got a call from a Jewish organization about an elderly Muslim woman in Sarajevo who was very ill and needed urgent medical attention, which wasn't available in Sarajevo at the time. She had to be evacuated. And she couldn't be evacuated with using the usual channels, because the Serbs used to stop the buses, and if there were any Muslims on board the buses, they used to take them out, and I dread to think what happened to those people. So I was asked to arrange with my friends at the United Nations that she should be airlifted out with one of the Hercules from Sarajevo airport. I phoned up the office of Kofi Annan, who at the time was responsible for these matters, and I said that we need to help this woman leave Sarajevo. So they said to me, we do not do ethnic evacuations. We only do evacuations of all different people going out together, but we can't do an evacuation just for Muslims. So I replied, am I hearing right? Here I am, a Jewish rabbi, asking that a desperately ill Muslim woman, elderly Muslim woman, should be evacuated for medical attention, and you speak to me about ethnic evacuations? Thanks God the woman was evacuated and got medical attention and lived for many years after. Why am I telling this story? The basic reason why is when it comes to suffering, there are no particular groups who suffer. Especially minorities. We all suffer. And we can't say that our suffering is greater than your suffering, or our suffering is unique. Sadly, suffering is something which Muslims and Jews in Europe know all too well together. In 1492, Jews and Muslims together were expelled from Spain, and the Inquisition tortured those who remained. In Bosnia, the Jewish community, using the organization Benevolencia, remained in Sarajevo during the siege, refused to leave, in order to be there together with their Muslim brethren, with their Muslim fellow citizens, in order to help them during this difficult time. In other words, we're not just friends in good times, we're also friends when things get difficult for one another. My mother lost over 100 members of her family during the Second World War to the Nazis because they were Jews. Until this day, we do not know where they are buried, if they're buried anywhere. We do not know where they died. We do not know what happened to them. We know that they disappeared from the face of the earth. There are those who say that trauma continues for 7 generations. And the trauma of the Jewish people, the trauma of the Muslim people in Europe is so deep and so painful that if we want to understand Muslim and Jewish communities on this continent, we have to take into consideration the great trauma that we have suffered. Muslims and Jews are different. Muslim and Jews have their own communities, have their own traditions, have their own way of life. But there is a covenant of blood which sadly unites the Muslim and Jewish community. There is a covenant of suffering on the European continent that unites us very deeply. There are also positive things that unite us. Belief in one God. Nabi Ibrahim, Avraham Avinu, Nabi Musa, who's mentioned 122 times in the Quran, more than any other individual. Sadly, there are those who want to emphasize what divides us. But those of us who know our history, those of us who know our religion, those of us who look beyond the external and the superficial and see the deeper threads of the story, know that what unites us is very deep and very profound and very important. At this time, when sadly in Europe we see a resurrection of populism, of fascism, of people who hate minorities, this is a time for our communities to stand shoulder to shoulder, to protect one another, to work with each other, to show care and concern for each and every one of us. During the war in Bosnia, I was in daily contact with the Jewish community, with the Muslim community in Bosnia, and worked very strongly to bring about peace and harmony and to help those who were suffering. We have to work together. We have to see the humanity in one another. We have to see the ability to work together with one another. And God should help that the Jewish and Muslim communities should raise themselves, should raise ourselves above the petty issues that divide us, even though we all feel that these issues are important, and see that there's a very deep vein of positive things that unite us, and work together for the benefit and for a better future for both our communities in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Herschel Gluck, for your very thoughtful reflections. It is very important that at these difficult times, all of us work together and we address our challenges and oppression wherever they occur. May I now call upon Imam Kurtik to deliver his talk. Imam is an imam in the Bosnian community in Birmingham. So thank you very much, and you're very welcome.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi and good evening. It's really great honor and privilege to be here with you tonight. Every time when I talk about genocide in Bosnia, firstly, I want to make clear that this wasn't the first genocide that took place in Bosnia. According to historians, the last genocide was actually a 10th genocide. So fortunately, in Bosnia, history, very tragic history, does repeat itself. So I'm going to explain to you a background, what actually happened before genocide during the 90s. This genocide wasn't a coincidence. This genocide was carefully planned for many years. After Second World War, many writers, academics, especially from the Serbian background, they wanted to make sure to keep the flame of hatred alive towards Muslims. So very often they would refer to the past of Bosnia, to the period of Ottoman Empire, and they would talk about alleged crimes against Serbian population, which no historian can confirm that actually it happened. But that was one of the reasons to keep hatred towards Muslims, toward Bosnian Muslims. I'm going to tell you a story, very tragic story, about a Bosnian Muslim whose name was Ševal Tabaković, who was, during Second World War, in 1942, he was taken to the bridge in a small town in eastern Bosnia, in Visegrad. He was taken by the executors, by Serbian soldiers, to be killed. So they took a knife and they slit his throat and threw him into a river. Because that victim was a very good swimmer and he was a very good diver. He was local. He managed somehow to survive. So we are talking about Second World War. 50 years later, same person, Ševal Tabaković, Bosnian Muslim, was taken to the same bridge again to be executed. However, this time, executors tied his legs and hands, and this time he didn't survive. Later, his body was exhumed from the river Drina. This tragic story tells us how this vicious circle of war crimes and genocide repeats in Bosnia. And every year, every 20 or 30, 40 years, genocide happens again. So even though we said after Second World War, after Holocaust, even though everyone said never again, unfortunately it happened. Biljana Plavšić, a Serbian convicted war criminal, a professor of biology by vocation, she would say that Bosnian Muslims were genetically deformed material who embraced Islam. And that genetic material, by time, deformed even further. This way of equalizing a specific race with disease, we could only see how Nazis identified Jews. Just before the war in Bosnia, we could see that something big is going to happen, because nationalism started to grow, and in 1982, Serbian President Milosevic, later on known as a butcher of Balkans, he already somehow announced that Balkan will be very, very bad and very bloody place to be. And indeed, genocide started in 1992. As we know, Srebrenica happened in 1995. So before Srebrenica, already tens of thousands of people, innocent people, were killed. Srebrenica was only culmination of the previous war crimes. We are talking about incomprehensive horror that the whole world watched. Numerous concentration camps were established. Over 50,000 Bosnian girls, women were raped. Some of them even gave birth as a result of rape. So these tragic events tells us that we, in fact, Bosnian Muslims, we have to be always prepared. We can't sleep, unfortunately. And we can't trust that anyone will come to protect us if anything happens. Because we believed United Nations that they would protect safe zone Srebrenica. Unfortunately, UN failed to do so. And it resulted in the biggest massacre after Second World War. Because only in 3 or 4 days, more than 8,000 people were killed. One of the important lessons that we need to take is that we always have to be aware we have to be aware about our environment. And for those who don't know where the Bosnia is, or they don't know exactly, Bosnia is surrounded by Serbia and Croatia. both countries through the history, they always had territorial aspirations towards Bosnia. What's more, even now, Croatian president, unfortunately, gave a statement that in Bosnia there are more than 10,000 radical Muslims, which is, as we all know, which is nonsensical statement. It's a nonsense. So instead of paying respect to the victims of genocide, now it seems that we are in position that we have to apologize, that we are still alive. Not to mention that in Serbia there is a constant genocide denial. War criminals, they don't have any remorse for what they did. They never apologized, apart from those in The Hague who only want to reduce their prison sentence. That's the only time when they give apology. We need to know that in the case of Bosnia, we can say some very surprising things happened, which is when our president, our first president, Ali Izetbegovic, said, "We shocked world twice." First time, we shocked world when we resisted a very powerful army, because Bosnian Muslims were attacked by Yugoslavian army. Ex-Yugoslavian army was the fourth strongest military power in Europe. They were fighting against unarmed civilians. And second time, when Bosnian Muslims shocked the world, is when they didn't take any revenge for everything that happened to them. Because easily, we could have set up concentration camps, we could have destroyed churches. More than 6,000 mosques were destroyed in Bosnia. In the same time, Bosnian Muslim government protected and guarded churches. Even some churches were repaired because they were damaged by the bomb shelling from the Serb positions around Sarajevo. So if someone really showed the highest level of tolerance, and if you like, even forgiveness, and not having any desire for revenge, that's Bosnian Muslims. So whoever is trying to imply that someone in Bosnia from Muslim background, that he could be dangerous, it's really, really offensive. It's a really offensive statement. And in the end, I would like to tell you a short story that we all know in the world that we live in, that there is a rise of hatred, nationalism, far right is on the rise as well. So the story is about a prophet Solomon or Suleiman. So they said that during his time, as we know, that prophet was able to understand the speech of animals. So during his time, there was a huge fire. So everyone came to help to extinguish the fire. Among them, there were ants, small ants. So someone said to them, well, why are you helping? Because obviously you are so small, you can't do a lot. So they said, perhaps we can't do a lot, but at least we can say and we can show which side we are supporting. So perhaps we are not powerful enough to extinguish the flame of hatred and nationalism that is growing around us. But at least we can show which side we are supporting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Imam Merced Kanjic. Very powerful reminder and important message for all of us. You've reminded us of the history and the historical perspective in the Balkans. And clearly, again, it shows that this perpetuation of hatred is not the way forward, and that is not in the interest of humanity at all. And one fails to understand really why generations after generation would perpetuate such hatred, which results in genocide after genocide. You've also reminded us about the inaction by the UN and the United Nations. And again, I mentioned earlier that we literally watched it on our TV screens, and that they did nothing. They just stood aside, and that is a shameful inaction on the United Nations. And the same is the truth with regards to the impunity of the Serbs for their action, and that's another blot in human history for us, and we need to learn from that. I remember, I think it was our Foreign Secretary, Douglas Hurd, when he was asked about providing arms to the Bosniaks. I think his excuse was this is going to escalate the war. As you mentioned, such a powerful military force, almost eradicating a whole nation, and the excuse was this is going to escalate it. So rather than protecting, we were in fact encouraging the oppressor. So thank you very much for your reminders and important reflections. We're going to have a presentation, a song from Shahid Falahi and Shah Noor in a minute. Before that, I want to apologize, and I want to take your leave. I have another engagement in Leicester, and I would like to go. So I'm really very, very sorry that I have to go. I'd like to hand you over to Dr. Abdullah Falik, who's going to continue from here on. He's actually done all the work for this event. I'm just standing in front of you. So Dr. Abdullah, would you like to come to the front? And can I just bring to your attention, we have a video from Hassan Nuhanovic. He used to work for the UN as an interpreter. His publication, The Last Refuge, A True Story of War, Survival and Life Under Siege in Srebrenica, is available to you. It's at the back at a cost of $14.99. I hope everybody will buy a copy of this, inshallah. With that, can I invite Shahid Falahi and Shah Noor to the front and ask Dr. Abdullah to take over. Assalamu alaikum.
Dear respected brothers and sisters and friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This song is actually a reflection of my own response to looking at conflict through TV, through social media. And I don't live in a war zone, but it's very easy to become desensitized. And it's important to understand that these are real people and that these are legacies that are driving real lives. Bismillah. There's a word in the song called Ummati, and it's the nation, it's actually the Prophet's call on the Day of Judgment, my nation, that all of us here are the nation of the Prophet Muhammad, and that we all belong to the divine grace of God. Bismillah. Images flash before my eyes, and I should be feeling an aching, a shaking right here, but what is wrong with me tonight? I feel dead inside, an empty shell, I can tell right here. Is this what life is? Not even worth a tear. After pain, after fear, right here. Ummati, Ummati, why can't I feel you inside of me? Ummati, Ummati, Why can't I hear you as you bleed? Ummati, oh Ummati. Why can't I feel you inside of me? Ummati, Ummati. I pray for the day my heart breaks free. I am blinded, trying to find it. My humanity, mind is chained and wants to be free right here. I'm surrounded, oh so confounded. In delusion great, need his light upon light right here. I surrendered, I remember reaching into me. Distant cries in my nights right here. Oh Ummati, Ummati, why can't I feel you inside of me? Ummati, oh Ummati, why can't I hear you as you bleed? Ummati, Ummati, why can't I feel you inside of me? Ummati, Ummati, I pray for the day my heart breaks free. Oh, I've been assailed, oh, derailed by the thunder in my mind. Should I run? Should I stay? Now that I've exposed my eyes, I see, I feel, I see, I hear, I feel the hurt, and I know with certainty the first step to change the world, I've learned it starts with me. Ummati, Ummati, why can't I feel you inside of me? Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shah Noor, for this beautiful song. Again, so it's my pleasure to be co-hosting this evening's program. I'm really delighted that a number of guests are here tonight also, including people from the Uyghur community, from Myanmar and other places, who are also suffering similar fate of genocide, unfortunately. So tonight is an important gathering where we can learn the lessons from Srebrenica and also chart a way where we can avoid future happenings like this. Our next speaker tonight is Dr. Eric Gordy. He was here 2 years ago speaking about the Serb narrative and how they perceive the Bosnian Muslims as problematic, and on this basis they actually inflicted genocide on the Bosnians. So we'll ask him to now speak a little bit about how the narrative of hate is built and how that translates into actual genocide. Professor Eric Gordy is a professor of political and cultural sociology at the University College of London. He's the author of a number of books, including Guilt, Responsibility and Denial, The Past at Stake in Post-Milosevic Serbia. He has a new book coming out very shortly. I'm sure he will speak about that in his presentation. So over to you, Dr. Eric.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for welcoming me here. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. The 33 victims, you saw footage of their burial a few minutes ago. These are the 33 people whose remains were found and identified in the last year. And so they were added to the approximately 6,600 people who are already buried at the Memorial Center in Potocari. And that's out of the about 8,400 victims of the genocide in Srebrenica, meaning that there are about 1,800 victims whose remains are still waiting to be found and identified. And the reason they have not been found and identified is that the remains have been moved and hidden in an attempt to destroy evidence of the crime. Now, we're here to commemorate the genocide in Srebrenica, but I think that when we talk about Srebrenica, we really need to talk about genocide occurring in all of Bosnia and Herzegovina in the 1990s, although this is a point that the courts have not agreed on. But what do we mean by that? Here's one way I'd like to put it to you, and that is that as the country of Yugoslavia began falling apart, various national groups ended up taking or ended up experiencing the taking of power by groups advancing a cause called nationalism. Now, nationalism is a word that gets used a lot. What do we mean by nationalism? There are a lot of definitions of nationalism going around and competing with one another. One of the simplest and the one that's most often given to students is this, that nationalism is the proposition that the territory where the members of the nation live and the borders of the state should be identical. Okay? I think you only need to think about that definition for a couple of seconds to see just how dangerous nationalism is, because what it means is all of the members of the national group are on the territory of the state. Everybody in the territory of the state is a member of the same national group, and none of the members of the national group live outside the territory of the state. This is a goal that has been unsuccessfully attempted many times in many places in history. It has never been achieved, and the attempt to achieve it has always involved violence. And why does it involve violence? It's because the basic goal of nationalism cannot be achieved without forcibly changing the population to make it resemble the political idea. And this is what happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina. When the Serb Democratic Party, leading its group in the parliament, walked out and formed the parliament of the Republika Srpska, the Serb Republic, in 1992, they adopted a resolution. It's usually referred to as the 6 strategic goals. And the 6 strategic goals all have to do with different places in which they say, euphemistically, populations should be separated. This is what happened during the war. There was the effort to separate the population. How? In the only way that populations really can be separated, by killing people, by forcing them to leave, by intimidating them, and by dispossessing them. So that's why we talk about genocide across Bosnia and Herzegovina. That is not only in Srebrenica, where there are about 8,400 victims, also in places like Prijedor, where there are about 4,000 victims. I mean, we're talking about 96,000 victims during the course of that war altogether. What do we confront now? We've talked a bit about denial. The most prominent incident of denial in the last year, since the last commemoration of the genocide in Srebrenica, was an effort by the government of Republika Srpska to withdraw the report on the crimes in Srebrenica that was published in 2004, to appoint 2 new commissions in order to revise the findings of those reports. So this is, when we say that somebody is lying about history, we like to use the term revisionism. This is somebody actually trying to lie about history by revising it. But I should say, when we talk about denial, we don't just mean denial of facts. That exists, but it's not the most important part of denial. We don't just mean celebration of crime. That also exists, but it's not the most important part of it. The most important part of denial has to do with downplaying the significance of events, with altering the context of events in order to change their meaning, with dissolving events into disputes over terminology, disputes over the question of whether, for example, the killing of over 8,000 people in Srebrenica was genocide or a war crime. I mean, a matter possibly of great interest to lawyers that does not affect the meaning of the crime to ordinary people. I'll say another thing about denial, because there are many people talking about denial of crime, especially in Serbia. I just want to talk about the not inconsiderable group of people who are doing the opposite of that in Serbia, who are trying to affirm the responsibility of the public to know the facts and to account for them, sometimes at considerable risk to themselves. And people like this include people like the group The Women in Black, and in particular Stasha Zajovic, the Youth Initiative for Human Rights, and especially Ana Mitric, the Fund for Humanitarian Law, and particularly their heads, Nataša Kandić, Sandra Orlović, and Jelena Krstic. And just in the last week, we have commemorated the passing of another person who was a leader in this effort, and that was Borka Pavicevic, who set up on property owned by her family the Center for Cultural Decontamination, which is the place where people were able to inform themselves about these events. So what we're talking about here is keeping memory, keeping consciousness of events alive, so that their meaning can be recognized, and so that it's possible, maybe, to prevent violence based on religion or based on other forms of identity in the future. Why do we care in particular about Srebrenica? We're talking about a small, remote country, relatively small numbers. 8,400 is fewer than the 900,000 victims in Rwanda, a number that is unknown, but that will certainly be large in Syria, and so on. I'd say there are some reasons why we might care about it. First is that larger events elsewhere that we're hearing about, events in places like Syria, in Myanmar, in China, follow a similar pattern. And they follow a pattern in which you can see genocide occurring according to stages that can be recognized and identified. I mean, this is why people are raising their voices about the mass imprisonment of immigrant children in the United States. Another reason is that people committing acts of large-scale violence in other places have explicitly used the criminals responsible for the genocide in Srebrenica as models, as an example for themselves. This includes Anders Breivik in Norway, who killed members of the youth wing of the Social Democratic Party. It includes the killer who a few months ago in New Zealand committed a large massacre in a mosque. Now, when people do this, they use images and rhetoric that were used by the people who committed the genocide. If you look at the discourse of the far right, they look at immigration, and particular immigration from places like Africa and the Middle East. They use terms like an invasion. They use terms, one of their favorite terms is the Great Replacement. They think that there is a campaign to replace the population of Europe with populations from other places. So this is violent rhetoric that targets migrants, minorities, in particular Muslims, and conceives of them as a threat. I mean, I can give you a finding from scientific research. This comes from the American sociologist Daniel Shiro, who has looked at all of the instances that he could find of large-scale ethnic violence, of genocide, of similar types of mass killing in history, and asked, is there something that can be found as a unifying cause behind all of them? And here's what he came up with. He said, genocide happens when there is a majority group whose members perceive the members of a minority group as presenting a fatal threat to them. So it's that kind of pattern and promotion of hate and division that we recognize in this instance that we need to look out for in the present and in the future. Thank you for your time and for your patience.
Thank you, Dr. Eric, for your presentation. Just wanted to say to you, our previous speaker, Imam Mirsad, he spoke about the lessons from the 24 years of the genocide. His speech is featured in this newsletter that you have on the chairs. So you should take a copy of this with you when you go, as well as the Friday sermon, the khutbah of the Grand Mufti of Bosnia from last week is also in these publications. So please take this along with you and share it with others. I'd like to now call upon Leo, Nick, and Sam to introduce the next video. And the next video is about our next speaker who was supposed to speak via video to us from Bosnia. Unfortunately, he fell ill overnight due to exhaustion and a lot of media and other appointments. And he sends his salams and greetings from hospital. But we have a video now, and our colleagues here will say a bit more about that.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sam Oates. I work for the publisher Peter Owen Publishers. Behind me, this is Louis Hollis. Louis is a filmmaker. We're also related, if you couldn't tell. We're cousins. I'd like to thank Abdullah and the London Muslim Centre for inviting us here today to share with you both a film and this book by Hassan Nuhanovic, which we've just published only yesterday, in fact, so it's really hot off the presses. It is called The Last Refuge. It is Hassan's memoirs of the Bosnian War and the Srebrenica Genocide. I'm told that, well, I mean, Hassan Nuhanovic is probably a name that is familiar to some of you, but maybe not to all of you. It's a typically tragic story. It's worth mentioning, in fact, going in reverse order. He's a high-profile campaigner and activist for justice for the victims of the genocide in Bosnia. He helped set up the Potocari Memorial. He is currently working on a new museum out in Potocari. He almost, well, I mean, with the help of lawyers, single-handedly brought a legal case successfully against the government of the Netherlands for its role in the genocide. And his story, I think it begins in 1992. He's a 22-year-old. He's studying engineering at Sarajevo University. And when the war breaks out, he flees with his family and tens of thousands of other Bosniaks through the villages and mountains and forests of eastern Bosnia along the Drina River. He and this large group of refugees obviously make their way to Srebrenica. Hassan survived the genocide because he was employed by the Dutch Bat as an interpreter. And this guaranteed him a ticket on the bus out of Srebrenica. But it was not good enough for his brother, his father, and his mother, who all perished at the hands of the marauding Serb battalions. Last year, I should say that my wonderful colleague, if you can call him a colleague, he's the managing director of the publishing house, is selling the books later, and it's a fantastic read, and I highly recommend you purchase one. Last year, Hassan invited Louis and myself out to Bosnia to make a short documentary. It was originally intended to be in aid of the book, but it morphed into something quite different, and I think maybe Louis can say a few words about what it morphed into.
Hi, good evening. I won't go into too much detail because you're about to watch it, but what you're about to see is a shortened version of the film that we made. I think the premise was quite a simple one to begin with. We wanted to make a film that could accompany the book and sort of illustrate Hassan's experiences in the lead up to Srebrenica. But when we got there, as he took us through the villages around the Drina Valley, places where he hid with his family, we came across all these villages which had previously been destroyed, razed to the ground, the inhabitants forced out or killed. And what we found were villages that were partially or entirely rebuilt, and small amounts of people who had returned to rebuild their lives there. And we felt that this was a really important sort of contemporary part of that story. And there are not nearly as many people there now as there were. And Hassan sort of laments that these populations are aging and there are very few children here. And so he fears that this is perhaps a longer-term effect of the genocide. And we're very privileged to be able to present this film to you today as part of the Commemoration So thank you very much.
Thank you both. So this film is roughly 7 minutes, 6.5 minutes exactly. So can we have the lights over the back, please? And the film will start.
The story dies with you. If you want the future generations to learn what happened, you have to put it on paper. I'm 50 years old now, and these horrible events happened 26 years ago exactly. And I still feel when I'm in here as if this forest is hugging me. You know, like it sort of embraces me, you know, and that's how we felt even in '92. The entire population of the village was hiding in this forest. And one smaller group went by mistake to a wrong side of the forest, and they were all killed on the second day. They dropped air bombs on us in the valley and in the forest. Artillery, mortars, infantry fire from all sides. I went to school with the Serbs together, and most of the time you would never even think of their ethnicity, and they would not think of your ethnicity. I mean, most of the time. We left our home in the neighboring town of Vlasenica weeks before, so everything we had stayed there. By the moment we reached this village, we were already refugees. And there was a part of the village that only was for the Nuhanovic family, and there were some other families in the other part of the village, so it was about 200 people altogether. That was before the war. After the war, which is now, there's only 10, 12 people living in the village. Everybody is trying to bring life to this region, even the people who are in their 60s or in their 70s. I mean, they do hard work. They do hard work every day, and they look for the best. They hope for the best. And they don't think that life will finish here, you know, completely one day. I'm just trying to do some sort of logical calculation. What happens with the places with no kids? In UK, Croatia, and every other place, places with no kids simply die out. I think basically that, you know, the life has been killed in this region. There was a genocide here, and we all know what the aim of genocide is. The mortal remains of my father were exhumed and identified 10 years after the war, and the mortal remains of my mother and brother were exhumed and identified 15 years after the war. I learned how to cope with it on daily basis, and it goes on and off. And when it goes off, you are a normal person, and you can even enjoy. I come here and I enjoy, listen to the birds, feel the smell, look around. It's beautiful. But then when it comes back, the memories. It's bad. It feels bad, but then I just shake it off, you know, with my head, and I try to live normal life and enjoy, you know. I don't know how the future is going to look. For the time being, there's some life in all of these places, or most of these places. I mean, did their plan, you know, come true? That's another question. I don't know. In terms of the number of victims, it did. In terms of life returning, at least in some form, to this region, maybe it didn't work. I don't want to really give any totally pessimistic, you know, prognosis, but you could imagine that in 10-15 years you will find no one in this place.
Thank you. So that was a presentation about Hassan and his experience, his life in the conflict. So I really urge everyone to buy the book. It's at the back. Today it's priced at $14.99, and it's just fresh off the press. I had a review copy earlier on. I'm telling you, it was really a gripping read, because he really goes through the experience he went through, how he escaped, you know, bombings, how he fetched his clothes to go to another place. At one point he says, to save time, he heard the Serbs are coming to attack his house. He went back to his house to grab some luggages, some clothes. What does he do? He puts 3 layers of coats and jumpers on top of him to save time, because he can't carry this luggage with him, and he runs. So it's really a really interesting book to have. So I'd encourage everyone to buy the book and read it, and also encourage others to buy. The book's at the back, and it's published by Peter Owen Publications. So look it up also if you need to later on. Thank you for the team for the video also for tonight. So we come to our keynote speaker now tonight, the guest of the evening, and it's my honor and privilege to introduce to you our mother, our sister, Janazah Kurdik. She's known as the mother of Srebrenica, one of the many mothers who survived the persecution, the genocide. She lives the tale of having lost her husband, 32 members of her family, and many more atrocities she's experienced. So without further ado, I'll ask her to come and speak in front of us, and also we'll ask Sister Amra to translate for us. Sister Amra is from Remembering Srebrenica, and they've kindly facilitated this segment of the program. So welcome to Sister Janazah and Amra.
Veliki selam za sviju vas. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
My big salams to everyone here tonight.
Ja sam Janazah Kurdik, asocijacija majki iz Srebrenici. Dragi prijatelji, obraćam se sa ime svih žrtava, u ime preživljali, a posebno mi žena Bosne i Hercegovine i majke čiji su djeca ubijena u Srebreničkom genocidu.
My dear friends, my name is Janazah Kurdik. I come from the Association of the Mothers of Srebrenica. I speak to you in the name of all victims and survivors, but especially in the names of the women of Bosnia-Herzegovina and the mothers whose children were killed in the Srebrenica Genocide.
Moj muž Junuz je imao 42 godine kada je ubijen. Moj sin Mustafa koji je imao 20 godina, Mehrudin koji je imao 18 godina kada su ubijeni, su samo trojica od preko 8.000 muškaraca i dječaka koji su ubijeni u brutalnom Srebreničkom 1995.
My husband Yunus was 42 when he was killed. My sons Mustafa was 20 years old, and my son Mahrudin was 18 years old when he was killed. They are just 3 of the over 8,000 men and boys that were brutally killed in Srebrenica Genocide in 1995.
Od njihove smrti su prošle 24 godine. Mustafa je ukopan 2005. Yunus 2009. a Mehrudin 2010. Ali uspomena i nada što se desilo krici pucnjava i ono što mi najteže pada uplašene oči moga sina Mustafe će se progoniti do kraja života.
24 years have passed since their deaths. Mustafa was buried in 2005, Yunus was buried in 2009, and Mahrudin was buried in 2010. But the memories of what happened, the screams, the shots, and the most unbearable of all, the terrified, pleading eyes of my son Mustafa will continue to haunt me for the rest of my life.
Zadnji put sam ga vidjela Mustafu kroz prozor autobusa koji je odvozio nas žene iz Srebrenice pored puta pod nadzorom naoružanih stražara nalazi se grupa preplašenih zarobljenika.
My last sight of Mustafa came as I was being driven away from Srebrenica by bus. I saw a cowering group of prisoners by the roadside under armed guard. They were part of a call of men and boys who had tried to escape through the woods.
Oni su bili dio kolone muškaraca i dječaka koji su pokušali da pobjegnu kroz šume, dok je autobus prolazio pored njih vojnika koji su bili pripadnici bosanskih Srba, vikao je nama, ženama, pogledajte svoje sinove i muževe, ovo je zadnji put da ih vidite.
As the bus passed by, a Bosnian Serb soldier shouted out to the women, "Recognize your sons and husbands. This will be the last time you see them alive."
Pogledala sam i vidjela svoga Mustafu, pogledi su nam se sreli nakratko, a zatim je sagnuo svoju glavu i to je bilo zadnji put da smo se vidjeli živi.
I looked up and I saw one of them was Mustafa. We made eye contact for a brief moment before he bowed his head. This was the last time I saw him alive.
Ni danas ne znam šta se je desilo sa Mehrudinom. Moj muž Yunus je vidjen u grupi od 1000 muškaraca i dječaka koji su zarobljeni, odvedeni u skladište i ubijeni.
To this day, I don't know what happened to my son Mahrudin. My husband Yunus was seen to be a part of a group of 1,000 other men and boys that were taken to be captured, imprisoned, and eventually killed.
Svi su oni bili dobri ljudi, dobra srca. Ne prođe ni jedan dan da se ih ne sjetim ni njih. Naveče zaspim sa bolom u srcu, a budim se sa tugom.
All of them were so kind and gentle. There isn't a day that goes by where I don't think of them. I still go to bed with pain in my heart, and I wake up with sorrow.
Dok danas stojim pred vama, mogla bi vam pričati o svemu užasnom koje sam se dočila. Vidjela sam kako ubijaju trudne žene, vidjela sam kako srpski vojnici zaklali dječaka koji je imao samo 10 godina.
Standing here today in front of you all, I could tell you about all of the horrors that I witnessed with my own eyes. I saw how they were killing pregnant women. I saw how they had a Serbian soldier had decapitated a young boy that was only 10 years old.
Užasi koji sam svjedočila nisu prestali, oni se nastavljaju do dana današnjeg. Kao član asocijacije Majke Srebrenice mi se svakodnevno suočavamo sa pravdom već dvije decenije.
The horrors that I've had to endure in life haven't stopped. They continue to this very day. As a mother of the Association of Srebrenica Mothers, we have been campaigning for justice every single day for the past 2 decades.
Nikad nismo tražili osvetu niti zaborav mržnje. Mi samo tražimo pravdu I istinu.
We have never sought vengeance, and we've never acted with hatred, because hatred is a sign of weakness which we refuse to succumb to. We just seek truth and justice.
Ipak 24 godine nakon što smo izgubili moje najdraže počinioci, ovi zločin se kreću slobodno I provode vrijeme sa svojom porodicom. Gdje je pravda u tome?
Even though 24 years have passed since I lost my dearest loved ones, those people that committed these crimes are walking free and are able to spend time with their loved ones. Where is justice in that?
Živimo sa ljudima koji znaju gdje su naša djeca. Zakopana, ali odbijaju da nam kažu gdje. Naši političari se ne stide, javno negiraju da se genocid dogodio.
We live amongst people who know where our children are buried, but they refuse to tell us. We have politicians who feel no shame in making public statements that they deny the genocide was ever committed.
Mi nikad nećemo prestati da se borimo za pravdu I istinu. Kao mi žene starimo, osjećamo težinu odgovornosti da se naša priča I priča naši najdraži čuje I zapamti I kada nas više ne bude drugi nastave našu borbu za pravdu.
We will never stop fighting for truth and justice. As we women grow older, we feel the weight of responsibility on our shoulders to ensure that our stories and the stories of our loved ones are heard and remembered, and that when we are gone, others will continue to fight for justice.
Od vas svi prisutni tražimo da nam pomognete u ovoj borbi. Hvala vama što ste danas ovdje, hvala vama što slušate naše priče I što čuvate uspomene na naše voljeni.
I am asking all of you here today to help us with this fight. I thank you for being here today. I thank you for listening to our stories, and I thank you for honoring the memory of our loved ones.
Zajedno sa vama rame uz rame stojimo u borbi protiv mržnje I netolerancije, jer mi zaista znamo šta mržnja može prouzrokovati ako neometano rastemo.
Together, I stand shoulder to shoulder with all of you in confronting hate and intolerance, as we know more than anyone else what hatred can lead to if it is allowed to flourish unchecked.
I još jedno, ne bih željela vama svoju muku I svoju tegobu dati, ali želim da budete s nama I uz nas, da nam pomognete kako vi možete, jer ne znate kako je majki svoga sina ukopati, jer mi tegobu snosimo 24 godine, a ne znamo gdje su još. Ja sam Mehrudina kopala bez glave I ruke, ali kaže, nije ga majka rodila bez ruku I glave, rodila ga je lijepu kao lijepu bebu.
I don't wish to put on any of my pain and sorrow of my story onto you all, but I do ask for you all to help me in this fight. We as mothers are the ones that know this pain, and we understand it fully. I buried my son without his head and without his hand, but I as a mother did not give birth to him without a head and a hand. I had given birth to him as a beautiful child.
I toliko hvala vam što ste me saslušali.
And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Ramiza Gurdic and Amra for translating. As every year when we have mothers from Srebrenica come and talk to us, we are really in awe. There's pin drop silence, listen to their voices and their experiences. The last bit she mentioned, she buried her son without a head. Just try to imagine that. You know, it doesn't sink in. It doesn't compute with our normal intellectual or normal life. But that's a reality. That was a reality in Bosnia many years ago. And 24 years on, mothers like Ramiz and others are still searching for loved ones who have not been found. This year, 33 people have been found and been buried, but many more remain in mass graves and the location people don't know where they are. So it's a challenge and it's really painful. Until the loved ones are buried, they can't really have closure. So this is why this campaign is important, and we need to support this sort of awareness and support the Bosnians as much as we can. Can I now ask one of our long-standing friend, and that is Margaret Maniolotti. She was a former social worker, interfaith worker in Tower Hamlets, and back in 2009, I had the privilege of joining her and a number of other interfaith members of Tower Hamlets Interfaith Forum to go to Bosnia and spend around 10 days. So I'll ask Margaret to share a few words now from her experience. Margaret.
Well, thank you very much indeed for inviting me. I've been before, and it's always a privilege to come to this really welcoming mosque. I'm so impressed with your friendly welcome and your thoughtful care. And I also want to thank Abdullah for inviting me, what is now a long-term friendship, I think, that we've had, largely over emails, because as you know how busy Abdullah is, I don't know how he does it. Anyway, this is just a very personal reflection, and how can I speak after such an amazing testimony from such a formidably wonderful and strong woman? This is purely a little drop in that ocean. And I started by thinking 10 years ago, I sat in the tranquility of my garden this morning. All was quiet and peaceful. Just some sparrows feeding on a bird feeder, roses bending lightly in the wind, and the brightly coloured flowers spilling out of crowded terracotta pots, adding to the joy of what felt like a real oasis in my garden. I sat silently, reflecting back 10 years to the time I was in Bosnia with the Tower Hamlets Interfaith Forum and the London Muslim Centre trip this week in July 2009. Usually when I reflect back on something, once I read my diary and I realise I haven't remembered things quite as they were at the time. Yet this time, when I check my diary and account of what I experienced in Potocari, Srebrenica on the 11th of July 2009, it chimed exactly with my reflections this morning. Such had been its impact. I think it was one of the most moving experiences of my life. We were a group of 11 people, 4 Christians, 5 Muslims, and a member of the Baha'i faith, together with a secular crime analyst, all with our own life stories and journeys, now all spending a week together, often crowded together in a minibus, which in itself became a kind of pilgrimage wagon in its own right, as we shared our hopes, fears, perspective, and ideas together. On the 11th of July at 7 in the morning, we set out from Sarajevo, our base, on the almost 100-mile, 3-hour journey by minibus to Potocari, Srebrenica. It was a grey day. Cloud was hanging heavily over the hills and plains as we climbed steadily up eastwards from Sarajevo towards the Serbian border. The rain fell and stayed with us all day. It was colder than in the city, and we wished we'd brought more clothing. As we approached Srebrenica, we could see and were stopped increasingly at roadside checks, asking the purpose of our journey. These appeared to be routine formalities, and we drove on, but all the time sensing a rising tension in the air that we couldn't quite place. We also realised that the police were from the Srpska Republic Division, the local police force that would have been present during the massacre. We finally arrived at Potocari and parked the van in amongst many other vehicles that were now streaming into the area. Then we were encouraged to sit on damp, carpeted ground around all those commemorative stones that you saw in the film, filled with the names of those who were known to have been slaughtered in the massacre. So many people from the same family, so many so young. There were mothers crying, There were mothers crying silently or staring into the sky blankly. There were old men praying. It would have been a fitting memorial just to observe the silent dignity of those moments. If only then we saw hundreds of very small white coffins covered in green being carried between those stones on their way to be buried, reburied, as well as those they were body parts discovered up to 10 years later of people who were massacred and their bodies strewn across the country, unknown and unnamed in secret locations. But thanks to the work of the International Commission for Missing Persons, had been carefully pieced together. A gruesome jigsaw of inhumanity, but giving some consolation in the grief and pain to their families that they have at last been brought together. The grief was searing and unbearable. After the ceremony, families stayed quietly together as burials and reburials continued throughout the day and prayers drifted over the hills on the plain. I went with several of my group across the grass towards some industrial buildings that lay rusting behind several large police cars. It was there that we realized the Bosniaks had been rounded up and massacred. It was a cavernous, very dark hulk of a building, and I smelt evil for the first and only time in my life. I had to get out quickly into the daylight. Where was the sun? Where was the sense? Where was God? There were police sitting staring forward from inside their big vehicles, silent and chewing gum. What were their thoughts, their memories? I shall always remember the dignity of those bereaved people, their silent grief on a grey day in the hills as the rain kept falling. And I remember it still in the peace of my garden. So let us this year bridge the divide, confront hate, and always remember Srebrenica. Thank you.
She remembers when we came to Srebrenica. She buried her husband Yunus on that year. For those that couldn't hear, she remembers. She was just saying to Margaret that she remembers when she'd come to Srebrenica because it was the year that she had buried her husband. So she remembers seeing her there.
SubhanAllah. I completely forgot about that. But she just remembered that trip when we went from the East London Mosque and the Interfaith Forum. We visited the Mothers of Srebrenica and various places. Has a very sharp memory, unlike us this day and age. So thank you. Inshallah. After that, after Margaret's speech, I think it kind of like concludes the evening of what the stakes are, what we can do, and what it means for everyone who goes and visits Srebrenica or Bosnia. So before we conclude, we was going to have a short video from one of our members of this congregation, Judge Belayat Hussein, who we sent from the Bosnian Heritage Foundation to join the 3-day peace trek from Tuzla all the way to Srebrenica. Alhamdulillah, about 4 or 5 of them went from London, and they managed to walk from Tuzla for 3 days, I think 60 kilometers, and they arrived in Srebrenica yesterday, and they took part in the funerals and the ceremony, and they're on the way back home today. We had a video, but it's not working out for some reason. But inshallah, we will post it on our website later on. But we commend Judge Balath Hussein and his team for joining the trek. Can I now ask Harun Rashid, who is the Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain? And again, with the Muslim Council of Britain, we have worked together for many years in sending delegations to Bosnia. So I'll ask Harun to kind of like wrap up the evening for tonight, inshallah. Harun Rashid.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good evening, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, and the heroines of Bosnia. I don't really need to say much about what's been said so far already about Bosnia itself. Much has been said tonight, and a lot for us to reflect on. What I wanted to really raise with you is what's changing or what has changed in those 24 years. Not only in Bosnia, but across Europe, and then beyond that, across the globe, in what we see today. So the Muslim Council of Britain, which is an umbrella organization for 500 mosques, charities, and Islamic organizations across the UK, launched a project this very week, just 2 days ago, called the Centre for Media Monitoring. Some of you may be aware of it. And this is a team of people dedicated to monitoring British media. That's in the print and in broadcast media. As has been said this evening, that the genocide that took place in Bosnia didn't happen just, the Serbs didn't just wake up one day and decide that they're going to remove Bosnian Muslims from their communities. They didn't decide just that one morning that they're going to wake up and shoot people. This hatred was built over time. There's a narrative, there's a story behind all of this. And how does it start? The Centre for Media Monitoring under the Muslim Council of Britain has examined 10,000 articles in the last quarter alone. So that's actually somebody reading, checking every single article. We've produced a quarterly report. The first one came out this week. Out of those 10,000 articles, this is about focusing purely on Islam and Muslims. 59% of all articles associated Muslims with negative behavior. 37% of articles in right-leaning and religious publications were categorized with the most negative rating of very biased. Over a third of all articles misrepresented or generalized about Muslims. And terrorism was the most common theme. That's 10,000 articles. Muslims in the UK represent less than 5% of the population. That's how much coverage, negative coverage, Muslims get in the UK. So you can imagine this drip feed of stories. And we see this commonplace not only in the UK, we see it across Europe, across the Western world, and actually even in those same countries where Muslims are now being marginalized and persecuted. Whether you talk about Myanmar, whether you talk about India, whether you talk about China. It's the same narrative every time. So we really need to wake up. And even I remember back in 24 years ago when I was in my 20s and we heard the stories and the reports coming out of Bosnia, people were even back then worried about what may happen in the UK. Could this ever happen to us? It can happen anywhere. If we allow that hatred to breed and to grow, and if we don't challenge it, if we don't unite as communities, whether it's here in UK or whether it's across Europe, or whether it's with our brothers and sisters in Bosnia, we have to work collaboratively. What's the point of marking this event here in London? It's hugely important to show that solidarity when we have that voice, to show that unity. It's very important. So I hope, inshallah, that this continues. And I know Bosnia Heritage has been working relentlessly over the years in raising the profile of Bosnian Muslims and their stories, bringing it to life. As we saw from the film, as we see from the books, we should buy the books, we should promote the film, we should visit Bosnia if we can, to make that story alive and keep it alive so that people learn from the lessons of history, inshallah. Thank you very much for listening. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Brother Harun Rashid, for the concluding words and remarks. So in conclusion, thank you all for coming tonight, especially our guests from Bosnia, Srebrenica, and other speakers from Birmingham and other places for sharing your words and your insights with us tonight. Like I said, we wasn't going to have a video about a team that went from here to Bosnia this year, only a few days ago. But feel free to visit the bosniaheritage.com website, where you'll find a lot of information about the peace trek and other trips you can organize yourselves amongst families and others, inshallah. What do we do now? As Brother Harun said, we can't just sit by and wait for next year. When we met last year in this very room, since then we discovered another genocide about to happen or happening, and that is the Uyghur community. And we have some people sitting right in front, Sheikh Zahir and others from the Uyghur community here. They are seeing the very signs of a genocide taking place. A cultural genocide for sure, but where will that end up? So unless we act, and unless we act quickly and come and bring forces together, we will see more of this happening in the near future. So, it's really a warning for us, but at the same time, Bosnia remains a beautiful place to visit. I've visited many, many times. My family have gone there. Many people in this room have visited Bosnia. It's a place where you can relax. It's almost like Spain, the greenery. You have masajids, mosques everywhere, halal food, so you don't have to worry about where you can get your next meal or breakfast. It's all there. A lot of sports activities, cultural activities, visits, heritage tours. In fact, a lot of the Khalijis, people from the Gulf, from Kuwait and Qatar and other places, they're going in big numbers. They even have a village just for the Arabs now. So they have their own food, factories, so they feel at home. So we need to go there, inshallah, and show the support. It's enjoyable. And when we go there, the Bosnians feel they're not isolated anymore. They're part of the global community. So we need to support the Bosnians, inshallah, in other ways, not just, campaigns, but also we can also benefit from those trips. So at the end, I encourage everyone to please buy this book. It's very, very important. It's a very good read. It's only $14.99, fresh off the press. And inshallah, in the future, when Hassan, the author, is feeling well, he can probably visit us in the future where he can talk to us. Also, take this publication where Imam Mersad's speech is there, and also the Grand Mufti's. Read it, inshallah. Visit both the eastlondonmosque.org.uk website and the bosniaheritage.com websites for information and updates. So we thank you again. Inshallah, see you in the future. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.